Hi everyone, I'm Aaron Ruck, and today what we're going to do is we're going to go over how to load tools into our variety of tool holders. Okay, so if you look right here, I've got a lot of holders. There's a large variety of holders that we have here. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what holders and what collets go together along with our pull studs, and I'm going to show you what types of tools that I prefer to put into the holders. Okay, so let's get started. So the first set of holders I'm going to go over are going to be my CAT 30s. That's CAT 30. Now I have a set screw holder and I have a collet holder, and this collet, this is an ER style collet that will go into there. Now the difference between a CAT 30 and a CAT 40 is going to be the size of the holder. Now even though those holders can hold the same size tool, I will be going over the CAT 30s first, and I'll be going over the difference in the pull studs. For a CAT 30, I'll be using our smaller pull studs, and a CAT 40, even though they do look the same, again, the size is what is different. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take this over to my tool change station and we'll go from there. So as you can see, this is our new and improved tool change station. Now everything that you see on here is going to be a combination of CAT 30 holder station, and then I have two CAT 40 holder stations. Now down here below, you'll see that I have all of these tools and their location on where they go. I've engraved the tool holding locations so that all my tools can stay organized. This will help me stay lean and productive whenever I start loading tools into holders. So the first thing we're going to start off with is our CAT 30 set screw holder. Now on this CAT 30 loading station, you'll see that I have multiple ways to load it in there for tightening my retention knob, setting the set screw, but if I'm more comfortable setting it here, I can do that as well. So for this example, I'm going to go ahead and set it right there. And the first thing I want to show is that a set screw holder is made for an end mill. As you can see, there is a welded flat right here, and that is made for that set screw to give all the torque to this end mill while it's cutting. Now I do have a 1/2 inch drill that you can see does fit in there, but that's not how I want to do it. I want all of my edge finders or indicators to go into my drill chucks, and we'll go over that here in just a little bit. So we'll put that out. I'm going to go ahead and grab my 1/2 inch end mill, and we're going to slide it in there. And if you have trouble seeing where this welded flat is, we can always take this set screw all the way out, and then you can look down in the holder until you see the welded flat go in. Now as you can see, as I slowly push it into it, you can see the welded flat go into location. What I don't want is I don't want my set screw to be right there. I want it to be right there, and I want it to be out as much as possible so the tool doesn't pull out when it's cutting. If I have it like this, you'll see that it does need to be centered up, and if you tighten your set screw on there, it will work just fine. So now that I have that in the right location and I can visually see it, I will go ahead and start screwing this down. Now, what I want to do is I don't have any Allen wrenches over here. Now that's a reason for that, because for this example, we're going to be using our torque wrench. Now when you grab your torque wrenches, for this example, I'll be using my 7/32. I'm already preset to a torque setting of 20 foot-pounds. So when I stick it in there and I tighten it up, as soon as it pops, I am done. So I have the right amount of pressure on a tool, and that's how I'm going to do all my setting with my set screw holders. That gives me the right amount of torque, and it's quick, and if I have to take it out, I would simply switch it to the off position. I will come over and I will just loosen it up enough to where that tool can come right back out. Now I will show you an example on the CAT 40 when we get there. The next thing I want to go over is going to be my CAT 30 ER collet holder. So I'm going to swap this out because if you notice, that last tool already had the retention knob in there. So if you look over here, I'm going to use my retention knob installer, we'll call it that, to actually put a pull stud or retention knob on the holder. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to screw it in there by hand until it comes to a stop, and then I'll put my torque wrench that's already set to 30 foot-pounds. I'm going to get it on there, and I'm going to hold this while I tighten it. And again, I'm keeping my pressure on here. I'm pushing down because this thing will tend to pop out. Now again, with this style holder, if you hang this off the edge, you'll be able to get right underneath it. But for this example, we're going to do it like this. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to hold this tight. And again, it's going to take a little bit of finesse, but that's how you get it on there. Now, when I am done with my tools, I put them back where I got it. So this is going to use an ER collet. Now keep in mind, we're going to go over a lot of ERs, TGs, and DAs. But I have multiple sizes of these ERs, so I want you to pay close attention. For my Cat 30, I'm going to use the ERs that fit right into this holder. So on my bigger ERs, when it snaps in there, it will stay. With the little ones, it does tend to fall out. So that's what this holder station comes in handy for. So I'm going to snap it in. I'm going to go ahead and start putting it on there. Now I've already got a drill, because on my collet holders I will be using this for edge finders, for drills. If I don't have a drill chuck, that's when I would use an edge finder in here. But I'm going to use a collet holder for holding most of my drills and spot drills or reamers. So for this example, I have a 3/8 drill, and I'm going to slide it right in there. So I loosen up just a little bit so it can go in there, and then I'm going to tighten it up by hand. So when I tighten it up by hand, I have this ER 20 collet wrench. So I'm just going to put it on there, and you can see this is my non-dominant hand, and I did not put a lot of pressure on there. I just took it, one hand push, and I'm in there. That's a lot of torque on there. Now again, to take it off, I'm just going to loosen it. Now normally when I'm using collet holders, I like to put it in here because I've got a little bit more stability. It's really up to you on how you want to do it. The next thing I do want to point out is I'm going to pull this out. When I am done with my tools, I'm going to put them back, and again with the collet, I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to take it and put it back in the shelf, and I'm going to put the cap back on it. The next thing I do want to point out is I don't want you to stick end mills into collet holders, because when you do that, you don't have the same amount of torque or pressure that comes from using that Weldon flat. So yes, they do fit in there, but if you can't avoid it, you need to not put end mills in collet holders. So now we've gone over all that we need to for our Cat 30s. We've gone over our collet holders and our set screw holders. So from here on out, we're going to move on to our bigger holders where we have a larger variety of styles. Now if you look right here, you notice that I said we're going to put up our collets when we're done with them. I have shelves that are labeled with collets, ER collets, TG collets. I have more ER32 collets. So we have over here, I have my ER collets for the one that I just took out. Now if you'll notice, I have two different sizes, and I'm going to make sure that I set them with the right sizes. Now on these collets will be an engraving or a marking if they're still new. Now I have my ERs right here, and if you notice right here I have my DAs, and right here I have all of those retention knobs that we were looking at, whether what machine they go to, and we'll cover that here in just a second. If you look down here, you'll notice I have a large variety of sizes on my TGs, and if I come over here for my bigger ER collets, you'll see that I'm going to cover those here in just a moment. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our Cat 40s. Again, that's CAT 40. Now I have two holders that look different, but they're going to hold the same style TG collet, okay? Now these are gonna snap in, but when they snap in, they're gonna stay in. All right, so I've got my station over here for my Cat 40s. Again, same thing. I'm gonna load it in there real nice and tight, and I'm gonna get this. Now one wave will sit a little bit lower than the other. That doesn't sit very low, but if you'll notice, that sinks in just a little bit more. That way it won't slip as much when we're tightening it. So the first thing I'm gonna do for these is I'm gonna go ahead and put my retention knob on here. So if you look at my picture, you'll see that I have multiple styles of retention knobs. Now for this example, I'm gonna be using a Haas retention knob, and I'm just gonna hand screw it into it until it gets flush with it. Now sometimes these are kind of be a little bit rigid going in, so you might take a wrench to actually screw it in all the way flush. But before I put torque on it, I'm gonna come over here and get my torque wrench. That again is set to 25 pounds. I'm gonna stick it on there. And again, I wanna be safe about this, so I'm gonna kind of hold it as I'm tightening it, so that way it doesn't fly out on me. So I put downward pressure on it, and then it holds it right in there. Again, once I hear it click, I'm done. So now I have my pull stud on there. I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna take off the cap, and we're gonna put in our TG. So I'm gonna put it right here, and I'm going to snap it in there. All I'm gonna do is push it down, and you can see it holds it in there. Now take it out, I'm gonna apply pressure just like that. So again, I'm gonna push it down, and you can do that by hand. You don't have to put it on here. I'm just doing that for an example. And the next thing I wanna do is I usually like to go ahead and stick the tool in there. That way it's ready to go. Sometimes you can stick it in there after you've screwed it on a little bit. It's just up to you on how you wanna do it. But again, something I wanna emphasize is even though this end mill fits inside this collet holder, because it has a Weldon flat on there, you need to put this in a set screw holder so that it gets the amount of torque it needs for cutting. So I'll set that to the side. We'll put this in there, and then I'll put it in there just like that. Now on these, I have this style of torque wrench right over here. It's actually called a TG collet spanner wrench. So I'm gonna grab this. So I've got my wrench. I'm gonna put it on there, and I'm going to tighten just a little bit. Now keep in mind, you don't have to put a lot of pressure on here. This is my dominant hand, but I'm not pushing down real hard. You'll actually feel it stop. If you push too hard, all you're gonna do is start damaging those threads. So now let's go ahead and break it down. So what I'll do is I'll actually swap positions. Again, it's slipping, so I wanna rotate it until it falls in there. I'll take the same collet wrench, and I will loosen it. Now keep in mind, I loosened it and it's loose, but the thing about collets is as I turn it, watch, it got stuck again because there's 2 points of contact where it starts putting that torque on there. So again, I'm gonna release it. Now the harder it is to loosen it, the more difficult it will be when you get to that second position to loosen it. At this point in time, I'll go ahead and put my wrench back in the right location, and then I will simply pull the tool out, and I would take my holder out. I loosen out the TG collet, I snap it, I will put this back on the holder, and then I will go put this in the drawer, and I'll put this back on my holder rack. So now that we're done with our TGs, let's move on to our ER. All right, now that we're back over at my table, I have 2 different size ER collets. So I want to be real careful right here. Obviously there's a big difference between this ER and that ER, but if you look right here, this is what you would call a DA. Now that DA collet stands for double angle. So you can see that there's an angle right here and an angle right there. It looks a little bit easier when you have it in your fingers. But if you look at my holders, you'll notice the DA and the ER are very similar. The only thing I can usually tell the difference is by the style of cap, and when we unscrew these, an ER will snap into the holder and a DA will sit flush with it. Now you can put a DA in an ER, but it will not clamp properly. You'll actually start screwing up your collets and costing yourself money. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with our ER collet holders, and then we will come back to our DA. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start with the larger ER collet holder. And what we'll do is we'll take off the lid. We'll go ahead and set our collet right here because it does snap in there. So again, I'm gonna push down. And sometimes it's gonna be a little bit more difficult. So you might put your palm on there, or like I said, you can always just put it together like that. But it comes out the same way as a TG. You're gonna take it and just snap it off to the side. So again, if you want to by hand, if you get it nice and flat, you can snap it in there. Sometimes it is a little bit more difficult. That's why I like to set it on a flat surface. So we'll go ahead and screw it in there. And again, I'm not screwing it all the way on. I just did about 3 or 4 rotations just to get it on there. Maybe even less than that if you want to. Now again, it's a collet holder, so I want to use a drill. Now drills do fit in set screw holders, but I do not recommend that you do that. So we're gonna go ahead and put that in there, and we're gonna go ahead and tighten it up. Now again, it's up to you on which style orientation you want to use for tightening this up. So now I'm going to come down and I'm going to grab my ER32 spanner wrench right here. Now what it does is it comes up on here and it's going to fit just like that. Now it might be kind of hard to see, but it'll actually fit on the notches. Now again, I'm just going to push downward. If I pull up, it's going to pull this out. So I'm always putting downward pressure towards the stop. And then I don't put very much on there because again, just a little bit of pressure goes a long ways. I slide it forward off, and I'm going to go ahead and hang it up back where it goes. Now on the last example, I used a different style retention knob. So for this one, I'm going to grab our Doosan style retention knob because they all have the same threads on the back ends on my Cat 40s. So I'm going to put it in there by hand. I'm going to grab the torque wrench for my retention knobs, and again, once I get it on there, I'm going to hold it down while I push, and it goes just like that. So once I'm done, I'll put that back, and as you can see, I've got all that put where I need it to go. So because I'm going to use this same drill to go on the smaller one, let's go ahead and break this one down. I'm going to put it back in there. I'm going to grab my spanner wrench. I come down on it and I'm going to pull towards myself, and then I'm going to unscrew it. And then once it's done, I'll go ahead and slide my drill out. I'll set it over there. Let's put my wrench back up, and then I'll just set this to the side for right now. So we'll grab this one. I'll go ahead and stick it in this one right here so we get a little bit different visual. And same thing goes with this. It's an ER. It's a smaller ER, but I'm going to set it right there, and I'm going to snap it in. Now sometimes you can see it will fall out. On these smaller ones, they tend to do that. So what I like to do is I like to put it in there and do this. But if I do that, it's going to fall in there maybe. So that's why I like to stick it in this one right here, because I know it won't fall out. So I'm going to snap it in there. I'm going to hold it at an angle. I'm going to let it start going in. Now keep in mind, if this falls out, you're going to have to take it off and re-snap it in there because it has to be snapped in. So again, I'm going to take my 3/8 or whatever size drill you have. I just used a common size, and we're going to screw it in there. Now on this one, I just have a standard 1-inch wrench. Now on this 1-inch wrench, I'm going to do the same thing. I just push down, and a little bit goes a long ways. So if I was done with this, I would simply do this to take it out, or I could stick it in here. It's up to you. And then again, give it a little bit more if it gets stuck on you. And then I'll set this to the side. I'll go ahead and put up my wrench where it goes. Now I want to take these collets out and put them where they're supposed to go. Now I'm going to set that to the side. I'm going to screw this back on. And then I'll do the same thing with this one. Take it off, snap it out. And then again, I would go put my holders back on the tool rack and my collets back where they go. So now let's go ahead and grab that smaller DA and let's bring it over here. So here again is that DA collet that we looked at just a second ago. I'm going to set that down, but this time I want to use this one because when I take this off, I will simply put the tool into the collet. Notice how it is a drill. And I'm just going to set it right there. That's what's cool about the DA collets versus the ERs. You set it in like that, and this just comes in, and that double angle clamping pressure closes on it and holds it right in place. And that's it. That one's very simple. So again, I'm going to grab my 1-inch wrench. I'm going to come up here, and just one hand. I'm not leaning back. I'm not doing very much on this tightening. I'm just giving it a little bit, and it goes a long ways. So just like that, I've got that in there, okay? So for the last retention knob, I'm gonna go ahead and grab a Venture. All right, so let's go ahead and put my tools back. And then we'll go ahead and put this right here. And here's my Venture retention knob. So I'm gonna screw that in there. Again, we're just gonna screw it in there by hand. And all three of these have the same thread. So I'll grab my torque wrench. I'll simply put it back on there, hold it in place, and then snap it. Now that will take you a little bit of time. You might slip a couple times. I want you to be careful when you do that. But you will get used to it. I'll set that back. And then if I was to tear this all down, I'll go ahead and set this back up here when I'm done with my tools, because that's very important that we break down our tools when we're done with them. But this one's easy. I'm just gonna loosen it. I can loosen it by hand, take the drill out. This comes all the way off. I take the collet out and I screw that back on. I'll go ahead and put my tool up. And now I'm gonna go put up my collet and my holder. And that's how you do the DA collet holder. All right, the next part of this video, we're gonna go ahead and grab a Cat 30 set screw holder, and I'm gonna grab my drill chuck. I'm gonna go quick on the set screw holder because you already have an idea how those work when I covered the Cat 30. So let's take those over there and let's cover those right now. All right, so what we have here is our set screw holder, and it's for a 1/2-inch tool. So I'm gonna take my 1/2-inch tool right here, and we're gonna slide it in until it is like that in the holder, so that my set screw can go on top of that Weldon flat. Now the one thing I want to cover on this part is I have different length end mills. So on my setup sheet, you'll notice for tool number 3, it says it's a 1/2-inch end mill, but also says it has to be a tall end mill. Now a lot of times you won't see tall or short depending on what you're looking at. A lot of times tool setup sheets will say length of cut, LOC, or length from holder, LFH. So on this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull up my scale. I'm gonna put it right there next to it. And if you look at it, you'll see that it says it has 1 inch, 500 thousandths length of cut. And when I stick it out of the holder, I'll stick my scale on there as well to whatever length from holder that it's supposed to be. So that'll come with a little bit of practice. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and slide this in here. And I'm gonna kind of feel where that Weldon flat is at as I screw this in. So as I screw it in, you'll actually see I can't turn it. So I can turn a little bit. Now keep in mind, I am not being very safe when I'm doing this. I'm actually holding on to the end mill. So I want you to maybe use a rag when you guys do it. So, but I can tell that I'm on the Weldon flat, and as I tighten it, it starts turning a little bit less every time until it's nice and snug. That's how I know I'm on the Weldon flat. But the last thing I want to do is, you'll notice it can not only turn this way, but it can go in and out. So I'm going to pull out as much as possible as I tighten it. So right there I'm tight. So now I'm going to click it. So now I know that I'm on the Weldon flat, and when I start cutting, I know that the tool cannot pull out anymore because the bottom of that set screw is flush with the top of that Weldon flat. That'll make a little bit more sense as you do it. So to break down this tool, I'll simply go the other direction until I get past that Weldon flat, which will take you a couple times on the turn, and then it just comes right out. So we'll go ahead and put my tool away, put my wrench over there, and we'll take this out. So the next thing I want to cover is I want to cover my drill chuck. This is a Universal Jacobs chuck, very handy to keep with you all the time. So I'm going to stick it right there, and I'm going to show you guys what this is for. What I don't want you to do is do not put an end mill in a drill chuck. It will not work. So please, by all means, do not put end mills in drill chucks. Now it is called a drill chuck, which means you could put a drill in there and tighten it up righty-tighty, but I do not like to use drill chucks for my drills because I'm drilling a lot of holes and I want as much torque and gripping pressure as possible on the shank of my tool. That's why I will only use collet holders for all of my drilling. What I will use my drill chuck for is my indicator and edge finder. Now the reason why is because it is a quick change holder. That is what I'll be using it for. Now I don't even have to come over here to the tool change station to load these. I can simply put this in the spindle and tighten it up by putting both hands on it and tightening it. But we are over here, so I'm going to put my indicator over here to the side, and we'll start with my edge finder. Now this is righty-tighty, lefty-loosey to open it up. So I'm going to go left until it slides in, and then I will righty-tighty, and just by hand, just like that, and I'm done. So now I would simply loosen it. I'll set my edge finder to the side. I'll grab my drill chuck and I'll just go righty-tighty. Notice I'm just coming down until you see these little prongs start coming together, and you want to go slower so you make sure you get the actual indicator where it needs to go. And then I just tighten it by hand and I'm all done. And depending on what machine I'm on, I will put the right style retention knob on there, use my torque wrench to tighten it down, and then I'm ready to go. But again, if it's already in the machine, I can just simply loosen it by hand and set it right there. Very universal, very handy, very good to have. So now that I've gone over the drill chuck, let's move to our last two holders that I'm going to use for all of my heavy cutting that are a little bit more advanced than what we've gone through already. All right, now these are the last two style holders that I have. I have a milling chuck and a hydraulic chuck. Now these hold very similar style collets. It's very easy to get them mixed up. Please do not get them mixed up. That's why I have them separated right here. Now my milling chuck collets are all going to be in this drawer right here in this foam that I've cut out. Now for my hydraulic, I don't have a spot for those at the moment, so you'll have to come find me if you want to get a different size. Now they're both going to be 3/8, but what we're going to do is we're going to take both of these over and go over them one at a time. All right, now we're back over here at our station, and I've got my Cat 40 holder station right here because they are Cat 40s, our milling chuck and a hydraulic chuck. But if you'll notice, they do kind of look like collet holders. However, I still don't want to put drills or reamers in these. These are made for heavy duty cutting with end mills. Now again, end mills have a welded flat and it's going around it, so my torque does come around it. So I could put a tool that has a welded flat in here. However, I want to start upping my game and I want to go to my carbide tooling. Solid carbide tooling, unless you specify, will not come with a welded flat. So what happens when it goes into that holder, I have a lot of gripping pressure in there. So let's grab my holder, and I usually stick it in here. That way I got a good bite on there, because sometimes it doesn't like to fit in here necessarily because it's kind of dinged up. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to drop it in there, push it down, and I'm going to tighten it by hand until I can't tighten it no more. Now if you have a spanner wrench with a torque setting on there, that's going to be what you want to use. However, I'm going to grab my drill chuck spanner wrench, this one right here. I'm going to put it on there, and again, I'm going to go until I feel it stops. So right here, I'm giving it quite a bit and it stops. Now if I put two hands on here and start leaning back, I can go probably another full turn. But there's ball bearings in here, and what happens is when you start smashing it, you're going to start damaging where those are at and the actual ball bearings themselves, and the holder becomes junk. So just like that, you're good to go, and that will take a lot of feel. That's why it's an advanced tool holder. So you got it in there, I want to take it out. So again, I'm going to put it on there, I'm going to come around, don't cut yourself, until I know it's loose, and you'll be able to feel it. So right there, it's loose because the end mill falls right out. Now it's kind of hard to get this out. So let's go ahead and put my spanner wrench back up. And if I come over here, sometimes I can get my fingernail underneath that and lift it up, but I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to use my scale. I'm going to grab my scale just to pick it up just a little bit, and then I'm just going to pull it right out. And that's how I would get rid of that. So Now that I'm done with this, I'm gonna go put this back in my drawer. I'll go put this back on the tool shelf. Now the last one I'm gonna go over is going to be my hydraulic chuck. So this is very fancy, very good. You can look up the differences as to why you would use a hydraulic versus a set screw versus a milling chuck versus the heat shrink. There's just a lot of styles up. So I'm using a Hydroforce. I'm gonna stick it in there, same thing, nice and snug. Now this one's the same way. I can use a Weldon flat end mill, but I'm gonna use one that's a solid carbide. It slips right in there, and then it goes right down. Okay, now obviously, I could have cut myself right there. So what's best to do is to put that in there first, and then I'll slowly slug that in there. Now right here is where I would pull out my scale, and I would start checking that length from holder and the length from cut before I tighten it. So if I needed to be sticking out 1.5 inches or 1 5/8 inches, that's how I would start measuring that right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab my torque wrench, which is 3/16. Now this is gonna be kind of weird because we're gonna have to screw it in quite a ways, because what's happening as it's screwing in, all that hydraulic pressure is going on it. So I have my torque wrench set to 20 foot-pounds, which is not very much, but is plenty for what we're doing. And once I get to right there, you'll see that I clicked it, and then I am very rigid. This is very true. So let's go ahead and put our torque wrench back up, and then that's how you would set that right there. And the same process would happen for taking it out. When I'm done with it, I'll take my torque wrench and I will start unscrewing it. See how I try to pull up? So when you start, maybe it'd be best to start over here, but then it's just coming back around until this lets go, and that's how you know it's done. So it comes right out. I'll give it one more turn. You don't want to pull this all the way out, just keep it right there. So let's put my Allen wrench back up. This slides right out by hand, and then I would go put this up with the holder until we find a spot for it. So now that we got all that done, we'll go ahead and go put it away. All right, well, I hope you like this video. I know it's a bit tedious because loading tools and holders can kind of seem repetitive, but in reality, this is a time-consuming element in manufacturing. So my goal is for you to understand what tools load into what holders and to do it efficiently and fast. So again, I hope this video helps you in maximizing your production in the shop. Please remember, if you like this video, to like and subscribe for more. And thank you again for watching. My name is Aaron Runk. Have a good day.